Hey guys, welcome to Savvy Programmer. We're gonna do another tutorial on iOS, beginning iOS. So if you're new here, there's a couple of other tutorials that start this series, and we're gonna go ahead and discuss mostly today about arrays and also collections in Swift. So we're gonna have to do a deep dive in Swift today. Last time we talked mostly about if and else statement, and we did kind of simple talk about arrays a little, but we're going to get into it more today about those, and that's all you need to actually create the game. And once we're done this, you'll be ready to we're going to start doing the UI for the game and then start coding it away. All right, I'm so excited. Let's go ahead and start. Alright, so in order to start a new application, we'll go to File, New, and Playground. And Playground is basically used to test stuff. So we're gonna just write some code in there. And you can name it anything you want for the Playground. I'll just say test tutorial today or something. And you can just create anywhere you want. Just press create, and you're gonna get to this screen. And it's gonna say hello Playground. So I'm going to go ahead and just zoom this for you guys so we have it all over the screen. Alright, so on top of the screen you're going to see something called import UI kit. We're going to talk about that later, but now it also comes, we did talk about variables in the first deep down tutorial. So we're going to go ahead and skip over, I'm just going to delete that. We're going to create an array. So you know how variables are created. The let creates a constant variable. It's a keyword for a constant. Constant means it never changes again. So if I say let list of items, and in Swift there's something called collections. Collections are a list, so it could be a list of anything. So we have collection starts with an array. Actually starts with a bracket open and bracket close. Actually most collections do. So there's arrays and dictionaries. We'll talk about dictionaries next time, but for arrays, so you start with a bracket open and a bracket close, and you put in a data type. It could be any data type you want. You could have a string. Remember, string starts with one quotation open, one quotation close. You can also start with you can also put in a true false statement. Remember we talked about Boolean statements. Or you can also insert your own custom classes. We're going to talk about classes actually in the next tutorial, where we're going to just deep dive into classes. So for this tutorial, so I'm going to go ahead and put in a list of items. I'm going to put in anything from, like I say, cars, like Mazda, Mercedes, Ferrari or something, right? They're not related. And make sure that the data type in array is always the same. And what we can do is we can loop through this array. So we're gonna go ahead and create a loop. So loop is basically, there's three different type of loops. There's a for loop, there's a do while loop, there's a while loop. So I'll tell you what each one means. So if I start a for loop, I start with a for, and then I type in what I wanna. So I wanna have a Mazda, right? So I can name it anything. I wanna say a car in list of items. And if I have that, I can just go and say print car, and it's gonna go through this list of items and print that car. So if I wanna go play it. So you can see it printed Mazda, and then printed Mercedes, and then Ferrari. So what it does is it goes through this loop and says, okay, I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna print this, and I'm come here and I print that, and I come here and print this. So another thing about arrays is they're zero based. So basically what this means is the index of this array is 0. starts with 0 and then goes to, so like the Mazda is at 0 index. Mazda is at 0, right? So remember we could do comments here. Mazda is at 0 index, and Mercedes is at 1 index, and Ferrari is at 2 index. So you're not counting from 1 to 3. You're counting 1, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you're counting from 0 to 2. So it's a 0 based thing. So and another thing is the list of item has a size, a count. So actually the count is 3. So if I were to say print list of items of count, and it's gonna print 3 because they have 1, 2, 3. See, 3. Okay, so another thing is I can also print the index of that item and get the Mazda from it. So you can say print list of items, and in order to get an index, you start with the bracket open and bracket close, and you put in the 0 if you want a 0. So you print 0, and it will print Mazda. Say, like if I go ahead and just delete that. If you want to do comment for like a whole block, like what you selected, you can press command and then the /, and it will do the whole block. So I want to print the list of item on an index 0. So it's gonna be Mazda. So I'm gonna do that for you. Okay, and if I wanted to index 2, it's gonna be Ferrari. But guess what? If I put index 3, right, it's gonna be out of index, because now it's gonna crash, and it's gonna say, okay, there's nothing in index 3 because 0 is Mazda, 1 is Mercedes, 2 is Ferrari, 3 doesn't exist, so it's gonna go ahead and crash. Check this out. So if I go ahead and do that, it's gonna say fatal error, index out of range, because it's telling me that the index that you told me is not in this range of the items that you selected. So that's how it is. So another thing you can do also, you can save an index. So like let's say I wanted to save that string, right? So I would say let car selected car, and I say list of items, and I'm saving it inside a variable, and now I can print that variable. Yeah. You can also remember we could also concatenate it and say the car I selected. I can say the car I selected, and you can basically concatenate it just like we concatenated before. You concatenate something with this, and you basically put it in parentheses, and so I have to close this and then go ahead and put that here. So concatenation is basically replacing the, so this is a string into another string, so it's a variable. So I'm adding a variable to a string. So if I print that and say, it's gonna say, okay, because it crashes here. So whenever it crashes, you have to fix the crash, because the program won't move from here. It would just stay here, just add this line. So in order to do that, I would just change this to 2, and also 2 here because I don't have a 3, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and play it. Okay, the car selected is a Ferrari, right? Okay, so there you go. So those are kind of one of the things for the array. Another array I showed you is that you can get the count by saying list of items count. And another thing you can do with the array, since they're collection, you can do a lot of things. You can do list of items dot append. You can append an item at the end of the list. Let's say I was gonna append something called Rolls Royce, right? Rolls Royce. I always spell right. So I think it's Royce. Say Rolls. Okay, so like a Rolls, right? So I'm gonna say append that, right? and it says cannot use mutating member or any middle value. Remember what we said? It said we created a constant variable, right? So we can't change that constant variable. So we need to change that to a var, remember? So now we can go ahead and change it. Now we're changing it and we're adding roles. So now if I were to print 3, remember now it won't crash because now I have a 3 index. So I say if a list of items on index 3, I can go ahead and print that. Okay. All right, let's get more involved with the for loops. So for loops, you can actually create do a for loop on a range. So I say for, let's say I want to count from 1 to 10, right? For I in 0 to 10, and I just print. If I print that 10 times, it's gonna be a lot, but I'm gonna do it anyways, just for fun of it. So what I'm doing is I'm printing this list, right, 10 times. So it says it's not I is never used because I don't need the I. You can just say for whenever you don't use something, you can put it on underscore in Swift. So if I go ahead and press that, you can see it's printing this list 10 times. So this is a range. We're gonna actually use a lot of ranges in the game that we're making. So it starts at 0, ends in 10, and everything with a range that has another operator. Remember we talked about operator last time, greater than or less than or greater than equal or less than equal. So if I were to do this, it would go from 0 to 9. It would print it 9 times. So it won't count the 10. So you say 0 to less than 10. Less than 10 is 9. So it would print to 9. So if I go ahead and do that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So since I'm starting at 1 and I'm printing 1 to 9. So this is actually not index. It's more like printing like whole numbers. All right, another thing you can do with for loop, like I showed you, is you can do for the variable that you want to do, car, you name it anything you want, in list of items, and you go ahead and print the car, right? And now the car will have more variables, more cars. So now I have a roles too. Anyway, so another thing you can do with this is you can also, I said that you can append it. You can also remove from a list. You can do list remove at. You can remove at index. Like if I wanted to remove like the last index, which is roles. So I would say remove at 3. So then if I were to print this again, it won't have the roles anymore. So if I were to print list of items at the end, see, it doesn't have the roles. So you can do that. You can also do remove all. You can remove everything. And a neat one is you can also reverse the string, the whole array. So you can actually reverse it. Instead of starting at 0 Mazda, it's gonna start at 3, 0, 1, 2 Mazda. Those are more complicated things. We don't need to know all that because, like I said, like when you want know something, it's better to know all the concepts beforehand, and everything else you can look up. And you can look it up on developer.apple.com and search for any kind of, like, if you were to go and let's say I was searching for collections, I would just go to collections. I would say arrays, and it would give me the reference for arrays. And you can see how it's kind of used and accessing the value, the for I was talking about, and we already talked about if statements. And you can see append. See, and you can even append the contents of and remove at, remove last. There's all this documentation. You can actually look it up later when you're actually coding. You don't need to know everything right now. So those are the main concepts of arrays. Let's go ahead and talk about the other loops later. I think you had enough. So for this challenge, I would suggest go ahead and create an array and play around with inserting and removing stuff from it, and also go ahead and list, the index, get the index, save it into a variable, print that variable, and do those kind of things, and go look up the developer.apple.com documentation. Go look for arrays and see how they're used. Get your hands dirty, and that's how you learn. So until next time, be sure to subscribe to get more tutorials, notifications for more tutorials. I always update every week. So go ahead and also click on that bell and turn your notifications on. And also, if you have any questions, go ahead and post it in the channel. Until next time, signing off, Savvy Programmer.